Welcome to the Ideal Impact Podcast, where our goal is to help you impact your life as well as society through the ideal skills. Let's go. Excited to be here. This has been a long time coming. Today we're going to focus on how the three of us know each other. So Randy, Brian, and myself. And then this episode is going to be focused on Randy Myers, the man, the myth, the legend. And then the next two episodes will be focused on Brian, then myself, and then we will get into the ideal skills and be having some awesome guests come on the show. So again, super excited to be here. So let's go ahead and get started. So Randy, why don't you guys start about how you know each other? So you've known each other for a lot longer than I have known either one of you.
Yeah, Brian and I actually went to preschool together. So back to the St. Paul's days in Paynesville. So I've known Brian for almost 32 years. 33 years.
Oh, man. You guys are old.
We are older. And I've known him a long time.
I feel bad for him. It's a long time to have to put up with me.
Yeah, for sure. So, and then Randy and I served in the National Guard together for 8 years. We met each other at Advanced Individual Training. Our outstanding 5 weeks of doing absolutely nothing at Fort Leonard Wood other than being told it was too hot to train in the air conditioning, which was very interesting. And for anybody who served in the military, you get how that goes. And for anybody who hasn't served in the military, that's how the military functions. It's too hot to sit in the air-conditioned truck.
They're soft nowadays. A little soft.
Yeah. So that was 2011. You remember that 4th of July that we got to spend there staring at each other while all the basic training people got to run around and do whatever they wanted?
I do remember. We sat in a line and we just stared at each other. Couldn't even watch the fireworks, which was pretty fun.
Yeah. And then when we asked to go to the bathroom, the drill sergeants made fun of us and treated us like children. Oh, little baby gotta go potty. You gotta go potty. Yes.
They were reservists. Yeah,
they were reservists.
Each other as they were smoking people. It was pretty fun. They were knife handing people. Pictures. Wait, let me do that again.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. They were literally posing for pictures as they were yelling at us and treating us like garbage. It was great. Good for them. I mean, they were enjoying themselves. And what did that one guy, when he got in your face, what did he say?
He asked me if I was a Cav Scout.
Yeah.
You a Cav Scout? And I was like, I don't know what that is, drill sergeant.
Do they have those in the do they have those in the National Guard, drill sergeant? I don't know.
I don't think it's Cav Scout truck drivers as far as I know. Cav Scout truck drivers.
Right.
I remember when he told our buddy Chip to get the Civil War out of his cap. That was hilarious.
Yeah, we should try to get Chip on here sometime. I think we'd have a good episode with Chip.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if we can fit him in.
Old Chip Brown. Oh, man. Yeah. Anyway, Fort Leonard was a great time. So Randy and I have known each other for about 12 years now, become very good friends, obviously business partners. I don't think that there are many people in this world that either one of us would trust to go into business with. So again, super excited to be here. And we're doing a lot more than just a podcast. And I'm sure we'll get into that in future episodes as well. But let's go ahead and get started. Randy, so just give us your background. Talk about what makes you Randy Myers, the man, the myth, the legend. Talk about your childhood, family life, education, professional background, whatever you want to get into to help us to get to know you a little bit better and get all the listeners to get to know you.
Yeah, well, Randy Myers is just one man. So,
one man that likes to quote Varsity Blues, apparently.
Varsity Blues, yeah. I mean, that was 99. In case if you're young and you don't know who that is, look it up. Varsity Blues is a great movie. I know I was born and raised in Paynesville. I mean, the only time I've really left here is to go to college. So I've been in the same county for 37 years now, almost 38 years. Childhood was, I think it was like a normal childhood growing up back then. We would wake up in the morning, leave the house, and then not come back until it was dark time. And it was just a normal thing. Like I look at it now and how I was raised and how my kids are raised, and it's so different. Like they can't go out all day long because this world's crazy, and I don't trust other people. But my parents had like a bell on our back porch, and they would just ring the bell, and I was like, oh man, it's time to go home and get some dinner. So I had a good childhood in that aspect of it.
Yeah, one thing that so you grew up in the same county and you went to the same school system as your girls are going to, but you grew up out in Leroy. So tell everybody the difference between kind of like where you're living now and what Leroy was like.
Well, I started in Paynesville, so the first until I was about 11, I was in Paynesville Township. Like actually, probably 2 minutes down the road from where I live now. And then when I was in 6th grade, we moved out to Leroy, which was a little bit different.
Leroy?
Yeah, I mean they call that the sticks around here. I guess for the school district we're in, that would be the sticks. It's a little more country. I have a lot of friends out there who lived on farms, and I got to work on those farms, bale hay,
through a lot of hay,
feed do things
the Browns kept you busy, is what you're saying,
they kept
right?
me busy for sure. And then I used to ride my bike down when I was in 6th grade to the Greg's, and I would bale hay over there for $5 an hour, and I was like, man, this is awesome, making $5 an hour. I thought I had so much money, and I was working when I was 12 years old.
I've baled hay for the man, and he's never paid me, so you're lucky.
Yeah, well, I didn't get paid in other areas when I was doing it, but yeah, I mean, it was just like when you lived out there, you were introduced to a different work ethic, and I think that's how between my dad and doing that kind of stuff, that's how I developed the work ethic that I have right now.
Yeah, and you know, again, I've known Randy for a long time now, and Brian, you have it as well, and that's definitely something that when I think of you and I talk to other people about you, it's the fact that you've been so disciplined ever since we've known each other. And this was so going back 12 years ago when we were that age and we were in the Army, we weren't nearly as disciplined as we are now. But even back then, that was something that I always respected you for, a level of discipline and pushing yourself. I even smoked in AIT sometimes, and you're like, you know, it's not going to be that bad. Like, we're going to get through it. And you always had a very strong mindset around that, and I'm sure that developed more. So talk about that, like, you know, what strengths or how did you develop that strength a little bit over time, and what maybe from your background helped with that?
Oh, well, I mean, I learned it from a young age from my dad. Like, he would get up at 4:30 in the morning and he would go to work, and I wouldn't see him again until 6 o'clock at night. And as soon as you get home, he was my baseball coach. So we would go to practice. Like, the dude nonstop work. That's all he did. And then in the winter, he plowed. So he's getting up at 2:30 in the morning, going to plow, going to work all day. And then he would go plow afterwards. Like, he never slept. So I learned that work ethic back then. And then just through sports, like, I got into wrestling in middle school, and wrestling had a huge impact on me, and that really helped build that discipline. Because if you don't put in the effort and discipline with wrestling, you gotta watch your weight, you gotta watch what you're eating, you gotta stay in shape, you have to keep your grades up, and if you're not doing those things, then you're not going to be successful on the mat. So that, like, I learned a lot through wrestling, and
that doesn't even count for everything you're learning on the mat, the technique,
right?
You know, the style of wrestler that you are. So you learn even more from it than I think you realize.
No, that had a profound impact on my life. Wrestling made me who I am today.
Yeah, what's that podcast that you suggested to me? I listened to a couple episodes of it. It was about wrestling, and it was I think wrestlers. Yeah, Wrestling Changed My Life was the name of the podcast. So for anybody out there who's interested, even if you're not interested in wrestling, because I wasn't up until recently, but listening to that, I gained a newfound respect for the mindset that wrestlers have, especially high-level collegiate wrestlers. They're incredibly disciplined, incredibly athletic. It's absolutely wild. So thanks for sharing some of that background, your childhood, your family life. So wrestling, you took that into college. So tell us a little bit about the education, the college experience, and everything that went into that.
Yeah. So like I wanted to wrestle in high school. So that's what I did. I didn't really care about grades so much. I knew I needed to keep a certain GPA, and that's what I did. So, and then when I graduated, like,
bare minimum there.
Yeah. I mean, I was no scholar. I mean, I was rocking like a 2.8 in high school. And when I graduated, I was like, I just want to keep wrestling. So I ended up going to a D2 school in Erie. It was Gannon University, and wrestling there. I loved it there. The preseason was more like cross country than it was wrestling. Man, we did a lot of running. I hate running.
Sounds miserable.
It was miserable. And I was introduced to 10-mile runs, and these are runs that I had never even fathomed doing that back when I was that age. Like, I was disciplined, but I was not intentional with my discipline. So I mean, I'll go into more detail on that later. But so yeah, my freshman year, I ended up getting injured. I tore my hamstring, and then so I ended up redshirting, and then I was not prepared for college my freshman year. I was like, I didn't go to class. So if you don't go to class, you don't do very
Oh, is that how that works? You have to show up to actually
show up.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Well, I'm
And
glad
was
I know
going,
that.
like, my major was physical therapy. So I'm taking like biochemistry. I'm taking all these science classes and math, and I'm not going to class. And I get like for freshmen, we got like a midterm report, which was kind of cool because it was a private school. So they were following us more and making sure we were staying up on our grades. And I had a 0.08 GPA.
That's
Whoa.
pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Did you earn an academic scholarship with a 0.08?
I did get academic money to go there, and
then you
Turns
got
out
a
you
0.08.
don't get that money when you have an 08.
no, I got put on probation pretty quickly. And then when you're at a private school like that, like I had a curfew, so every night I had to be in my dorm room. On a weeknight, it was by 10, and on the weekends it was at 11, and I had to sign in, and I had to go to my room. And yeah, like that first semester was rough. All I did was I partied a lot, I drank a lot, I played a lot of video games, and I did not do a whole lot of schooling. And then I had a nice little heart to heart with my parents, and they're like, well, we're spending a lot of money to send, like, you're 30 grand a year to go to Gannon, so, and you're doing terrible. So you need to think about this because we're not gonna help you out financially with this. So I had to make a big decision, and I ended up deciding that I was going to transfer back to an Ohio school because out of state school expense was too much. And I ended up going over to Heidelberg, and to get into there, I had to raise my GPA. So that first semester, I ended up finishing with it was like a 1.5, and then the second semester I had like a 3.6. So it was
Nice.
a big switch. But then, I went over
to one thing about that, sorry, do you think that conversation that your parents had, that intentional conversation that your parents had with you to hold you accountable, how much of an impact did that have on you in improving your grades?
I mean, I listened to what they said, but it was more of a decision that I had to make. Like I was 18 years old. Like, yes, my parents can tell me to do something and that I should do something, but until I ultimately hold myself accountable and make that decision.
So what was the pivotal point, though? Was it you knew you wanted to continue wrestling, or you knew that you wanted to get a college degree?
I knew that I didn't want to spend $30,000 a year to go to school, and they were actually raising the tuition, and the tuition went up to $42,000, and I was like, I can't. $42,000 is ridiculous, and like I'm taking out student loans on my own at this point at a variable rate, which I didn't know what that was when I was 18. I was like, oh, variable rate. I'll pay this off easily when I graduate because I'm going to have a sweet job. Well, you don't get a sweet job when you're rocking a 0.8 GPA.
But you busted your ass, and now you've got multiple degrees, and you make good money.
I ended up making better decisions later on in my academic career.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Pros and cons. Like transferring to Heidelberg helped me academically. It did not help me in my wrestling career. The coaches at Gannon were more supportive, and they were better overall leaders. And then the leadership at Heidelberg was way different, and it made me hate the sport. And I didn't really put in a whole lot of effort wrestling wise, but my grades were good when I was at Heidelberg.
Yeah. Gotcha. So you eventually graduate from college, and you also, for everybody out there, Randy has a master's degree as well, and as well as his principal's license on top of that master's degree too. So graduate from college. So what happens next?
So I graduated from college, and I'm like, now I got to pay all this debt back. Like I have $100,000 in student loan debt at this point, and I graduated with a business degree because, that's what most people get. And then I double majored with sports management, which no one tells you that you really can't find a job in that because that's like it's such like a broad area that it's so hard to my thought was like, I'm just going to go work for like the Cleveland Indians or like the Browns are going to hire me. I'm going to work in their front office. And it doesn't work like that. So yeah, I had big dreams, but like no know-how of how to get there. So I ended up taking an interview with a company, and it was a 4-interview process, and I got the job, and they're like, yeah, you just got it. We're going to pay you $28,000 a year. you're going to wear a suit every day, and then you're just going to wash cars and pick people up. I was like, I didn't go to college for 5 years to wash cars and pick people up in a suit while making $28,000 a year. So I decided to go back to school again and get my education license so I could be a teacher. And that's how I got into teaching.
Yeah, and something that you said there with that 28,000, that happened to me too. So when I was in school at Lake Erie College, I was doing sports management, and I remember one of my professors, he's like, "Yeah, the average starting salary for people with sports management degrees is like $18,000 a year." And I'm thinking, how am I going to afford to live on $18,000 a year? And I think that's something that high school and maybe even our parents to a point in my situation didn't maybe know, from my parents' perspective, but from school, they push that on you and they don't prepare you for that. It's like, hey, you're going to spend $100,000 a year potentially on education, and you're going to make 28 grand a year, and you're going to be struggling. Like, I don't remember anybody telling me that. So I think that's something that's important to note there, that I think we need to do better from a societal standpoint, is really educating kids on being intentional about, is college the best fit for you? Should you go to technical school? Is there something else out there? Could you start a business without any of that information? So I think that's something important that we learned the hard way. So,
right. I mean, there was no concept of all of what I was getting myself into. Like, nobody said you're going to have to take out loans and then pay all these back. And then, like, all they told me was, you want a good job, you go to college. Like, not how you're going to pay for it, or when you get out of college, like, you're going to be starting at the very bottom and you're not going to make a whole lot of money. And I had friends who didn't go to college and they went and did a trade, and coming out of high school, they're making 40 grand a year. Well, I mean, that's with no debt. I mean, they're in a good situation right now.
Yeah, for sure. So then you had mentioned briefly, so you got out of college and then you ended up turning that job down. And how did you get into education?
So I was coaching wrestling at the time, and I was really enjoying that. And I was like, what would be a good job to go with that? And I'm like, if I really like coaching, I was like, teaching seems to make sense. If I'm a teacher, then I can coach because my schedule will line up. So I figured that was probably the best avenue for me to go. So I wanted to be a history teacher. And I went and talked to them, and they're like, yeah, it's going to take you another 4 years. And I was like, oh my God, I don't have another 4 years. I was like, what's going to get
4 years and another $100,000 later?
How many years of college do you have now under your belt?
I should be a doctor. But yeah, so I was like, give me something that will happen quickly. And they're like, well, with what you studied in college, that's sports management, it translates over to health and PE. You could be done in 2 years with your license with student teaching. And I was like, okay. So that's what I did. I ended up doing the health and PE route. And then, just to make things more complicated and make my life a little more difficult, I decided this would probably be the best time to impregnate somebody. So I'm going to college and I'm student teaching with a baby. And
I remember the phone call.
I'm not getting paid during this time. So, it's hard to raise a child with no money. And that was a pretty difficult point in life right there.
So we'll talk about the ideal skills here shortly, but let's hit on I for a second. I would assume at that point in life, there wasn't a whole lot of intent going on, right? It was kind of living day to day.
It was living day to day. It was more like, I'm just having fun. I mean, there was no intent. There was no purpose to what I was doing. It was just, I was 23, 24 years old, and I was still hanging out with friends and doing stupid things. Like, I didn't have a goal. I didn't have a plan. I just wanted to coach wrestling and work out. That was pretty much what I wanted to do.
GTL. That's what you live for.
Gym Tan Laundry. All right. I like it.
And when we had the baby, my oldest, like that wakes you up. That's a life-changing event right there. And that made me grow up quickly, very quickly.
So you were already teaching when you had your first daughter?
I was student teaching, yes.
You were student teaching. So you were student teaching, you weren't getting paid weren't getting paid currently. And then at that time, what led you to the National Guard? Because right around that time is when you enlisted, right?
Yeah, I enlisted a little bit before we found out that she was pregnant. I had a lot of student loan debt, and I was like, how in the world am I going to pay this back? And I kept looking around, and I was I was going to join the Marines. That was what I was going to do. I was going to go not work at all, and I was going to join the Marines as an officer. And I was doing all the paperwork, and I went through like 6 months of this process. And then out of nowhere, the guy was like, "Oh, by the way, to be an officer, you can't have tattoos that show in a t-shirt and shorts." Well, I have a freaking Donald Duck and a wrestling singlet on my calf. And he's
badass tattoo.
It's bad. And he's like, "Oh, it could be gang related." And I was like, "Gang related? It's
the Donald Duck gang. You've never heard of them? They're very notorious."
So yeah, they wanted me to get it removed, and I refused. So I wasted 6 months of going through that process. And then I had a buddy who was in the Guard, and I started asking him some questions about it. And then he kind of hooked me up with the guy that recruited him, and that's how I got into the Guard.
Now, Brian, did you join the Guard? So that was one thing that all three of us have in common. We were all in the Ohio National Guard. Did you join before Randy, or was that after Randy?
No, I actually joined after Randy. I've watched him throughout the years, and he's always had a good head on his shoulders. And I watched him doing it, and I was a little envious of the step that he had taken. And so ultimately, I joined because my best buddy was, and I wanted to be doing what he was doing to improve my own life. So he's kind of what led me to join the Army as well.
That's awesome. I never knew that story. That's cool. I didn't know that. And
this guy joining the Army.
Yeah, I guess
what? G-Rap. Wasn't that called the G-Rap?
It was G-Rap. I got $2,000 for him, and then I got $2,000 when I got Chip to join. So I made out in that deal.
But Kevin
straight to student loans.
Yeah, it went straight to not student loans.
Straight to beer and his gym memberships.
More beer. All right. So yeah, go ahead.
And $2,000 a piece for these guys joining, and then like both of them deployed, and I didn't. So.
So you really got the sweet deal. You got $4,000 and no deployment. Outstanding. Have fun in Afghanistan, guys.
Brian joined knowing that he was being deployed. It was like, you're going to basic, you're going to AIT, and then you're deploying. Like that's the route you're going. And he still joined knowing that. So
yeah, for sure. All right. So we covered the Army a little bit. We got there. We talked about how you and I met, how you and Brian met, and now what of those things do you think was the biggest thing that kind of led you to where you're at now? Like, what of that specific background, we're going to get into some other questions here in a second. Was there any one thing in that background that was like, I need to do something else? So you mentioned kind of the birth of your first daughter. Would that be the one thing that you point is like, hey, I really got to get my life together and I got to get intentional with the way that I'm living?
I don't think I thought of it as being intentional. I just think I thought of it as like, okay, like I can't be going out and drinking and partying all the time and doing stupid things and wasting my money on stupid stuff. I need to grow. I need to get a job, a big boy job, and I need to start being a grown up. Because before that, I was just, I just want to have fun and hang out.
Essentially, adulting took over. You knew you
had I had to step up. Like I'm in charge of a person now, like their life. And that's scary. And yeah, that made me change quickly.
Nice.
So you've got 3 beautiful little girls, one of which is my goddaughter. You've got a beautiful wife. You are into BJJ. You're going to jiu-jitsu all the time. You're into listening to podcasts and reading. You've done all kinds of stuff outside of, with everything you got going on here in your family. How do you divide your time? How do you devote yourself to all these different things at once? I mean, I'm assuming intentionality probably takes a pretty big role in that. You're doing these things on purpose. How do you handle that? Like, how do you deal with everything that you've got going on and maintain a household and still work on a business like this?
I mean, I wish I could say it was easy, and it hasn't been a struggle. But I've learned a lot throughout the past probably 10 years because I've always had multiple things going on. I love being busy. I don't like downtime. Like I feel uncomfortable when I don't have a million things going on. So there was a point in my life where I was teaching, I was coaching, I was in the Guard. Like I was gone all the time. I would go to work at 7 a.m, and then right after work would be practice until about 6. And then if there was tournaments on weekends, like that's Friday, Saturday, I'm not coming home until 11 each night. And then I would be gone like the following weekend for drill. So I was gone a lot. And I didn't balance my time well at all. It was everything else was on the back burner. My jobs were priority, and that was not the correct way of doing things. And that led to a lot of hardship in my life. And I haven't figured it out until recently. Like, when you're doing this balancing stuff, you have to, like, we talk about one of the ideal skills is loyalty. And the way we look at loyalty is like, what are you being loyal to at that time? How are you balancing things? Maybe at some point in your life, you have to be more loyal to your job, or maybe you have to be more loyal to your family, or you have to be more loyal to something that you're trying to achieve. Like, the loyalty is constantly changing, and you have to learn how to balance that. And it's not easy. It's a struggle, and you have to listen to people. Like, if my family's coming to me and telling me that they feel like they're on the back burner, then I have to listen to that, and I have to take that into account.
So in the beginning, it was not easy.
No.
How effective do you feel like you're at balancing it nowadays?
I feel like I'm better, but there's still a lot of improvement that needs to happen. A lot of improvement that needs to happen. But in the past, I was more selfish, and it was more about me. Like, what do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? It's going to be the things that I want to do. And now it's like, all right, I have 3 kids now, so I got to make sure that I am getting to all their events and I'm spending enough time with them. I have a wife who also I need to spend time with. I have hobbies that I want to spend time on. I have friends that I want to spend time with. I have this business that we're trying to get started. I have my job. So, like, there's a lot of things going on, and I still struggle with balance. But, like, if you are talking to the people in your life that are important to you and getting feedback, and then actually listening to that feedback and implementing it, then it makes it a little bit easier. But
so
yeah,
you're trying to grow intentionally by listening and doing all of those things.
I'm not going to say I'm good at it still. It's still a struggle. It's still something that I'm constantly, because, like, I feel like as people, we are selfish. Like, we want to do things that are going to make us feel better and things that we want to do. So, like, jiu-jitsu is a big one. Like, I could go to jiu-jitsu 7 days a week because it's fun and I like it. Well, if I'm going to jiu-jitsu 7 days a week, then I'm missing out on a lot of things, and I'm dedicating a lot of time towards that. So I have to make a compromise and say, hey, I'll go like 2 to 3 days a week. And then, of course, I like to exercise. So how do I fit in exercise with all this? Well, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I get the exercise out of the way so that when I come home from work, I can spend more time with my kids. So you have to figure out the loyalty aspect of it, and you have to change some things around to make everything work.
Yeah. So one thing that we mentioned here was ideal. So the name of our business, so the podcast, and then also our personal coaching and leadership development business that's coming with that. We're going to be doing a lot with that. So what ideal stands for is intentional, disciplined, emotionally intelligent, accountable, and loyal. So we mentioned intentionality. We've talked about discipline a little bit. It sounds like there's a lot of emotional intelligence that goes into these questions that Brian asked you as well when you're balancing so many things. So can you elaborate a little bit more on the emotional intelligence piece? Because I think that's probably all of our biggest areas of opportunity because it's so challenging. So talk about maybe how you've grown in that aspect and how you leverage that skill specifically in your life right now.
I mean, it's always been probably the most difficult one for me, like the whole emotional aspect of life, like just the way I was brought up. Like there wasn't a whole lot of emotions expressed when I was growing up, and really until recently, like I didn't learn this until, like, I mean, I've gone to therapy before, and I was talking to the therapist, and they're like, well, because I always referred to things as me being angry, like, oh, that just makes me angry, or that pisses me off, or that ticks me off, and she was like, well, anger is not like the first emotion that you express. Like, there's something that triggered the anger, and you have to figure out what that is. So maybe I was frustrated, or maybe I was embarrassed, and that led to anger. But, like, I would always refer to myself as just being angry about something, when really there was a deeper down emotion that I should have probably noticed and worked on before.
I mean, and as a friend, I've known the dude for 30 plus years. That was always something I noticed about him. But at a time, I admired, because I'm like, dude, this dude, stone cold. Nothing phases him.
that's not a good thing.
But as we grew older,
it can be in certain situations. But go ahead. Sorry.
No, but I saw that, and then he started kind of on his journey to get that stuff out, which led for me to do it. So again, you know, I've watched him go through a lot of this stuff in life, but as a kid, he didn't have that.
Oh no,
He's a totally different person today now because of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
I
I
stuff
think,
hasn't happened until recently.
yeah, and I was just about to say that. I think one big thing for all of us has been the accountability that we provide for each other. So right before we started recording this, I was I was texting Randy because I was getting so frustrated because there was an issue with StreamYard in the program that we're using, and my computer was running slow, and I was just getting super pissed off. And Randy's like, "Why are you so mad? Like, none of this is within your control." So sometimes it helps to have those positive influences on us in order to remind us, like, woosah, relax, it's not that big of a deal. there are much more important things going on in life. Yeah,
right. And it's always easier when you have
Woosah.
that support system with you, because like if I was in your shoes today, I would have been getting pissed off too. But it's so much easier when you have somebody there who can be like, hey, is this really worth getting pissed off over?
Mhm.
It's not going to change anything. So getting
Right.
pissed off isn't going to solve anything. I just think
Yeah.
like with our age, like the way we were raised, like there was no emotions. It was like, all right, you're a boy, you don't have feelings. Like suck it up, be tougher. And like that's what I'm used to. And I still struggle with this, and I find myself saying it to my kids a lot and then at work as well. But like I have to make a point. I have to be intentional with this because it's not in my brain. Like I joke around that I don't have a heart sometimes, but like that's how I was brought up. Like you just have to tough through it. You just have to suck it up. You just have to keep going. You have to fight through it. Don't show emotion. Don't show pain. Like that was always what we were taught.
His dad and my dad were very similar in the sense that they were very manly men, and they weren't the super caring and overly affectionate guys. So that was what we saw in our own fathers
Mhm.
growing up. And it's like today, kids in school, you're a product of your environment, and outside influence is huge in kids. Well, in the home, it's huge for a father and a son. So I can attest to him probably getting a lot of that just because of the relationship him and his father had. Although his father loved him dearly, it just wasn't in his DNA either to
Right.
be that emotional guy.
No, I mean I'm not blaming anybody. That's just
No.
how it was. And then you take in wrestling, and then in wrestling it's always like, well, you can't show your opponent anything. Stone cold. Keep the same face. So like it's always been don't express emotion. So that's what I've been doing my entire life.
And then we joined the military on top of that, where at that time it was different than it is now and was still softer than previous generations, right? But even then in basic training, you didn't want to show emotions because if you showed emotion, then you were going to get singled out. So
right.
It was another reinforcement that emotions were not necessarily a positive thing. And I think one thing that I remember as a kid, and you guys probably had this too, was don't get angry. Don't get angry. Don't get angry. Well, I'm a human being. I'm gonna get angry. That's just part of being human, is showing emotion. So why don't you teach me how to manage the emotion and actually think through this and what it means and why I'm getting angry, so I can learn how to manage it. Not ignore it, not try to control it, control it, yes, but not bury it and just not get angry, because that's not an actual solution to the problem. I need to understand how to manage it. And I think that was another big thing that was lacking from, our generation.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if mine was so much don't get angry. Mine was like don't be sad. Boys don't cry. Don't show that you're sad. Don't show that kind of emotion.
Yeah. Same thing. I mean, same thing, different emotion, right? It should be, well, why are you getting sad? All right, let's talk about it. All right, cool.
Underlying issue.
Yeah, good. Well, thanks for sharing all of that with us. So the next thing that we're kind of getting into, so again, to revisit the ideal skills, one of the biggest things and our favorite thing to talk about is discipline and what that means to us. And this question goes right into that. So Randy, your hip is absolutely destroyed. So you went into some detail about that with me just recently. And then you decided it was going to be a good idea to, on top of jujitsu, which is great on your hips for anybody who doesn't know that, you also were like, hey, I'm going to go run a marathon, which is something you had never done before. So And then on top of that, so most people, when they run a marathon, they go out with a big group of people, and you picture like the Boston Marathon or something, and you're probably adrenaline's pumping. You're all hyped up because there's thousands of people around watching. But you decided to do it by yourself on one of the worst weather days this spring there in Cleveland. So, like, walk us through, why did you do it, knowing that your hip was mangled? Like, what was the training like? What was going through your head? Just kind of lay out that experience for us, because the level of discipline that went into this story, I think, is one, crazy and inspiring all at the same time.
All right, so like my hip is not as bad as what Kyle is saying, because like when you think of a
when you explained it to me, it sounded pretty bad.
I'm saying, hey, it's not that bad. You should just have surgery.
It's not like I need a hip replacement or anything.
Well, you're 37 years old.
Yeah, but so 2 years ago, I used to compete in powerlifting, and through like 20 years of wrestling, and then I probably did 2 or 3 years of powerlifting, and I was doing like you do deep squats in powerlifting. And I did a deep squat probably with around 500 pounds. And I don't know, I felt something pop, and I just let it go. Cause like, I don't want to go to the doctor because that's a pain in the butt. So I would say for probably like 8 months, like I just kept getting like this pain in my like groin. And I was like, man, I think I pulled my groin, or I have a hernia or something. And I went to the doctor, and x-ray didn't show anything. So I got an MRI, and it turns out like I had torn the labrum in my hip, and then like the ball that goes into the socket is too big. It doesn't really fit in there correctly because there's like it's called a cam impingement on the ball. So every time I rotate externally, like this ball is catching on my labrum and just tearing it more. So they're like, oh, we need to go in there. We need to shave that down, and we need to repair your labrum. And you're looking at like a 3-hour surgery. And that was 2 years ago. And I had just started jiu-jitsu at this time. Like I did jiu-jitsu right out of college. And then I had to make a decision, coach wrestling or do jiu-jitsu. So I took coaching wrestling, and I put jiu-jitsu on the back burner. And Kyle actually was the one who got me back into it. Like I kept saying to myself, I want to do it. But then I would just find excuses not to do it. Like what 35-year-old man starts jiu-jitsu? Like that's what I kept thinking. I'm too old to be going in there and rolling around with these young kids. So I did it anyway. And
you're welcome.
Yeah. I started to like it a lot. And I was like, I can't get surgery. I like jiu-jitsu. If I get surgery, I'm going to have to sit out of jiu-jitsu, and then I won't get my blue belt. So I'm going to do this until I get my blue belt, and we'll see what happens with my hip. So I just went on with everyday life, and yeah, I had pain in my hip.
Misery and pain.
I mean, it's not terrible pain, but you feel it. It's there. And I kind of adapted a few things that I do. Like I don't do squats anymore. I don't do deadlifts anymore. It's like I'm doing more functional training. Like I'm getting older, and it's like it's catching up with me. I got bad knees. I got bad shoulders. I got bad hips. And so I just kept going on with my life. Like it's just a little bit of pain. I'll deal with it. And so I hate running. And I was reading Dave Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. And this, if you don't know who Dave Goggins is, he's a very inspiring individual. And he talks about all these crazy runs that he's gone on, and how you need to get out of your comfort zone. You don't grow in your comfort zone. You need to be uncomfortable every day. So I'm thinking, what is something that's going to make me uncomfortable? And I was like, running. I hate running. The furthest I'd ever run in my life was 10 miles. And the entire time, all I thought about was jumping out in front of a car. Like, honestly, like it was wrestling, and I'm running with my teammates, and we're just joking around. Like right now we could just fall off the curb and just get hit, and we wouldn't have to run anymore. Like it's a joke. Like we're not serious about it. But so 10 miles was the furthest I ever ran. And I looked up this plan, and I was like, I can't run a lot because I got a jacked up hip, but I could probably do this plan that's 3 days a week. And then I'll run in the Cleveland Marathon in May. So I started the training program, and I was doing 3 runs a week, 1 sprint workout, 1 kind of like short run, and then a long run. And then, about halfway through it, like my hip was bothering me more. So I went to the doctor, got another MRI, and he's like, yeah, you really you've really increased the damage that was there before. So now, like, the tear is still there, the impingement is worse, and then he had said about 40 to 50% of the tissue is now missing. So I'm gonna have to get we're gonna have to get a graft from a cadaver, and we'll have to put that in there. So now the surgery has gone from 3 hours to 6 hours, and the first thing that I ask him is, so should I be running on this, or should I stop running? And he said, well, running in general is not good for your hips. And I said, well, you didn't really answer my question. I was like, I have a marathon planned in May, and I still have like 2 months of training left. And he's like, yeah, I wouldn't continue running for 2 months to build up to a marathon, because that's like, I'm doing like a 14-mile run, and then the next week's a 15, then a 16. So it's increasing every week. So I was like, all right, well, I'll make a compromise with you. The furthest I've run right now is 14 miles. What if I just take 2 weeks off, relax a little bit, and then I'll just run a marathon on my own? Yeah, I'll just run a marathon on my own on a Saturday.
Yeah, makes sense.
In a lightning storm.
Yeah, well, that part, yeah. So 14 was the furthest I had run. And then, yeah, I jumped to 26.2. I was like, I feel like in my mind, I was like, it's going to be all mental. Like, this is all mental. You've done 14 miles. Like, how bad could it be to do like 12 more?
What's another 12.2 more? That's pretty much nothing at that point. One thing I want to say here, though, is, you know how many people, like, the point is here, you know how many people would have not done this? I mean, you had a lot of excuses and a lot of reasons to say, fuck this, like, I'm not doing this. Yeah, but you didn't do that. It may have been smarter, but here's the thing is, you have to have surgery either way, right? That surgery was going to happen. You may have made it worse, but you set out to do something that not a lot of people, when you look at the population and the small percentage of the population that has completed a marathon, that's impressive in itself. The fact that you did it on an injured hip is extremely impressive. And then the fact that you don't even like running, I would assume most people that run marathons enjoy running and actually, you know, get something out of it, but you did it strictly for the discipline. You did it to make yourself uncomfortable and to push yourself to grow. And that's the impressive part on it.
Like, I did it because I don't like it. That's why like, when I don't like something, I'm going to find like the hardest thing that goes with it. And then I'm going to try to do it just to see if I can do it and push myself to do it. So yeah, I mapped out the run. I had my wife and daughters out there. They would meet me along the path. And like the first 13 miles was a breeze. Like, I finished that in 2 hours. I was like, man, this is going really well. So I ran out 13 miles, and then I was like, all right, now I just got to head back. So I'm heading back, and it's probably around like mile 15 where I start to slow down. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to slow down. We'll let the pace increase. Like, when I went out there, I was like, I should be able to finish this in like 4.5 hours. That was what I thought. So mile 15 is when I started slowing down. Mile 18, my body was like, no, we don't like you. Yeah, we're not. I'm not like gonna cooperate with you anymore. And my knees like kept locking up. And then so I'm like, all right, I'll just walk a little, run a little, walk a little, run a little. So I did that for 4 more miles. And it was mile 22. Like, I see these dark clouds rolling in, and the thunder is roaring, and the wind's picking up, and I'm like, shit, I'm gonna get wet. I'm gonna get wet again. And yeah, man, it happened so fast. Like, it starts hailing, and then trees are falling all around me. Like, literally, I had a tree fall behind me and then in front of me, and they're about 50 feet apart from me, which it's not that close, but I was like, holy shit. And then I got like a second wind there. And I started running again, and I'm yelling. Like, there's no one else out there, obviously, because it's storming like crazy. And I'm yelling, you don't know me, son. I don't know why I'm yelling that, but I'm just yelling it. And,
you're yelling that because you had David Goggins in your mind.
I was just trying to find a way to like I said, the first 13 miles was easy, and it didn't bother me at all. And like around mile 15, like my mindset changed. I was like, this is miserable. My knees hurt. My hip is killing me. I don't want to do this anymore. And then I got the other side of me, like, don't listen to your inner. And I'm like yelling at myself, stop being a bitch. And then I start running again. And then the storm hits. And then I'm yelling, you don't know me, son. And then I had to find some shelter because it got a little scary for a little bit. So I'm standing underneath this shelter at mile 22, and I'm like, I got 4 more miles to go. I am not quitting. I am not going home at this point. I don't give a shit if I have to speed walk this thing for the last 4 miles. And that's what I did. Like, I could not run anymore. My knees would not allow it. So I did some speed walking for the last 4.2 miles. I finished in 5 hours and 14 minutes, which was nowhere near what I wanted to finish in, but I finished. So I'm happy with that aspect. Like I said before this, I'd never run more than 10 miles. And then 14 was the longest, and then boom, jumped to 26.2. Was it smart physically? Probably not, because like that whole next week was miserable. Like the next day, like my knees didn't bend. Like my LCLs were so tight, like I couldn't bend them. And I was walking like an idiot. And I took a lot of ice baths, and it was a lot of stretching. But I'm glad I did it. Like when I look back on it, yes, it was miserable. Yes, it sucked. But
throughout all that, you had a lot of discipline take over.
Yeah, like I enjoy the grind of things. So yeah, it was hard, and it pushed me mentally. Probably like when I think back on it, like when I was 22, I was in way better shape. But there was no way I would have done this when I was 22. I did not have the mindset that I do now. I would have quit. I would have gave up. I would have found an excuse. And
Yeah.
At 37, not being in as great a shape and having bad knees and having bad hips, I was able to just suck it up and keep going.
Yeah, and I think that's the big takeaway here is the growth that comes with being intentional and pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone and doing it for the mental perspective. So I hate running too. I'm not planning on running a marathon. Maybe it'll happen at some point, but I'm running a lot more now than I ever have before. And it's all because of the mental aspect to it. I do it just like Randy said, because I don't like doing it. And in order to grow, you need to do things that you don't like. And to steal that line, so you're talking about Goggins, but to callous your mind. If you can callous your mind and do those things that make you uncomfortable, then chances are you're going to be able to do a lot of things that maybe aren't physical, that are uncomfortable, that you need to do in order to achieve the level of success that you envision for your life. So I think that's huge. And, again, huge respect for you going out and doing that and getting it done and not quitting. That's the biggest part, is just don't quit. If you have to walk, but just keep going. Just keep
you guys
going.
know, I was texting you guys during part of it, like, man, I'm starting to hurt. I'm starting to struggle. And you guys are like, just don't quit. Just don't quit.
We both kind of said when we knew how bad the weather, we were like, you should quit. Stop.
Well, if you're going to die, you might want to quit.
Like there's no way with 4 miles left though that I was stopping. And like what you were talking about with callous mind, like life is hard. Like you're going to come upon things in life that are going to be difficult. Your life is not going to be sunshine and rainbows all the time. And I feel like that's what we're giving off to people, like kids in school. Like everything is going to be easy. Everything is going to be great. You're a superstar. Well, no, that's not how life works. Life is hard. And what's going to happen when you come up to something challenging? Are you going to be the person that gives up and runs away? Or are you going to stand up to it and fight hard? And yeah, maybe you'll get knocked down, but you got to keep getting back up and keep going, getting after it.
So you mentioned, that we talk every day, all three of us. We're always talking, texting. We talk about.
Well, it's mostly me and Randy, and then eventually at some point you shoot a text.
Yeah, that's true. He'll be like, "Oh, I just read."
As a single dad with 2 kids.
Sorry, I'm parenting.
W-2 job. Sorry, but no, we talk about.
Just quit your job. It's fun. I promise.
That's what we're working towards, right?
Yeah, that's the goal. Yeah, we will get. Well, all 3 of us will be there soon enough. I can promise you guys that.
Doing that intentionally with discipline and all the other pieces that we talk about, it's going to happen. But still got to get there. It's not going to happen overnight.
Well, yeah, you got to have a plan. You got to be intentional with what you're doing. For sure.
But what I was saying is, we talk every day. We talk about current events, things going on in society. What is the thing right now in the crazy world we're living in with government stuff, private schools, public schools? What is the one thing that you think is so out of control that you would want, if you could change it?
I mean, there's a lot of things that I would.
This is the spiciest question of the interview.
I mean, this is a deep question, because right now, like when you look at what's going on in our society, like holy shit, like I don't know if it's because of social media and we're just getting more information than we've ever got before. But when I was younger, like none of this stuff like ever even crossed my mind. Like all the things that are happening, and like to pinpoint one thing, like it's gonna have to be like where my current field is. So like I'm an educator and my kids go to school, and I feel like the educational system is so jacked up. It's so jacked up right now. And
That's not just coming from a father. That's coming from a father seeing your kids deal with it, but
Right.
also as the teacher
As a
watching
teacher.
it as a classroom.
I am in school on a daily basis, and I see every kid in the building. So like I get a good viewpoint of not just like a select class. It's over 400 kids. So I'm seeing what's going on. A lot of my friends are teachers, so I talk to them, and it's not just one building that this is happening, and this is happening all over the country. And like the educational system needs to be fixed, and there are so many things wrong with it. Like I don't even know where you want to start with this conversation.
Well, to specify, like what do you mean? Do you mean the teachers are underpaid for what they deal with? Do you mean that the kids are out of control and are just running amok and running wild, or is it something else? What is it?
Is it like a lack of values? I think that's another good question on that as well.
It's all those things. I mean, teachers are underpaid, and the only people who don't think they are the ones who don't have to deal with children. Like I see people posting all the time about how teachers are overpaid and they don't do anything. Go to school and teach a class for a day, and then tell me that's something that you want to do, because it is not easy. And it's
I used to be one of those people. I absolutely used to be one of those people until getting to know you better and getting to know some other people that are in the education industry. And then I'm like, they're not paid enough, honestly, for the stuff that you deal with.
And it's gotten way worse with the stuff that you deal with. Like when you see like daily now, like there's teachers being attacked by kids. Like when we were in school, there was no kids hitting teachers. Like that never even crossed my mind. Teachers pissed me off all the time, but I was never like, I'm going to strike this person. Like that never, like the way I was raised, like that never even entered into my brain. Like I should hit this adult. Like that never came into my mind. Like if I did that, I would have been like, my dad will kill me. My dad will kill me if I do something stupid. And it's like back then, like I was in school, I got in trouble a lot. Like I was a troublemaker. I was the class clown. I liked to be funny. I liked to be the center of attention, and
He was always in trouble.
I was always in trouble, but I was in trouble for being a smartass. I was in trouble for doing what I thought was funny, and it wasn't at the time, obviously, to the teacher.
No.
But I'm not doing things like attacking people or destroying the buildings, or I mean, the bullying is insane. Like that, I don't even know where to begin with that, because no one's doing anything about it. That's the crazy part. Like the kids are going to the administrators, and families are going to the schools saying my child is being bullied, and nothing is being done about it. Like recently we just saw in New Jersey a child, an 11-year-old child, commit suicide in school, in the bathroom, because she just got beat up. Like there was recordings of her talking about bullying. She went to the principal. I think she went to a board meeting.
And that's what breaks my fucking heart, that nothing was done to prevent that.
Nothing is done. It's ignored. It's like we don't want there to be any conflict. We're trying to avoid conflict at all costs. If we're going to have to deal with an angry parent, then we're just going to ignore it. We're going to avoid it and just hope it blows over and then becomes somebody else's problem. Well, that is not how the world works.
Would you say, to like summarize the way that you feel about that, would you say that it's an overall lack of accountability from the administration standpoint? And then also it sounds like the root cause of the problem is starting at home, and then the administration isn't doing anything about it within the walls of the school.
It's an overall lack of accountability in society in general. Like in our society, there's no accountability. Like there's crazy shit that happens all the time, and people just get away with it. There's no accountability. And I don't know why it's our generation that's raising kids right now. I don't know why we feel this way, like that we don't need to hold our kids accountable. I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know if it's because their parents held them accountable and they didn't like it. But like I have talked to parents who have told me it is not their job to discipline their kid. Like Well, who the hell's job is it then?
Yeah, I was about to say, but then if you try to do it at school, you get in trouble.
Well, yeah, because they don't like that. They're like, well, we tell our kids that they're allowed to express themselves however they want. Well, your child expressing themselves and then doing it in a respectful way are two different things. Like, you can express yourself respectfully, or you can tell the teacher to go fuck themselves. I mean, you can't allow your child to do those types of things. Like, there has to be some sort of accountability at home. And then if those things do happen in school, we can't ignore it. We can't, like, we're just covering it up with a Band-Aid and then pushing them on to the next person, so it becomes their problem. And these issues just get bigger and bigger. And then when they get to high school, like, you can't control them, and it's just chaos.
So to kind of put this in perspective, you have kids nowadays telling you or other teachers, coworkers to go fuck themselves, and they're being taken out of the classroom for a short period of time.
No, they don't even get taken out of the classroom. Like, the whole thing is like, well, you got to keep them in the classroom. Like, I'm not supposed to single anybody out and remove them from an activity or put them in the hallway, because that'll hurt their feelings. And that
So in other words, we're breeding these other kids to basically think it's okay to do that as well.
Well, yeah, that's what it comes down to. And then if you do send them to the office, they just get sent right back. And then, so it's like, it's gotten to the point where a lot of teachers just ignore it. Like, they ignore it. They don't put in referrals because nothing happens. They ignore the behavior. And like, I've tried that. Like, I'm going to ignore it, but then it happens and I can't ignore it. Like, I can't ignore it.
Right. And here's the thing. So when we were in school, so me specifically, so Randy and I, again, you'll hear a lot of similarities in who we are and who we used to be and all of that. But I was the same way. I got in a decent amount of trouble. I got suspended once. I was in detention all of the time in middle school. And I used to get sent back and sit by myself in the back of the class. So which to me was embarrassing, and it made me shape up. I eventually said, wow, I'm a loser sitting back here by myself, and I would correct my behavior eventually. And then because of the accountability that happened in middle school, by the time I got to high school, I still did some of the same stuff, but I very rarely actually took it to the point where I had to be formally disciplined, because I was held accountable at a younger age. I learned my lesson. And then when I got to high school, I was like, okay, it's time to shape up. Like, I'm actually starting to become an adult. And again, to your point, that just doesn't happen anymore. And it happened at home and it happened at school. And if I did something wrong and I got in trouble at school, when I got home, my parents were like, well, what did you do wrong? It wasn't, what did the teacher do wrong? No, it was, what did you do wrong? And you're getting in trouble at home too.
This young man, calls my mom a fucking bitch to her face. And it's immediately, I am filled with rage. That's my mother, So I walk over, punch him in the face. Immediately, it's broken up. I'm sent to the principal's office. I'm on the verge of being expelled. They did not expel me. I got suspended. But I'm going home and I'm thinking to myself, my father's going to be proud of me. My father's going to be proud of me because I stuck up for my mother. I got my ass beat by my father and yelled at more by my mother at home than I ever got at school. Today, I don't believe that would happen at all.
No.
Well, and if it did, the parent would probably you would run to, so let's say that little Brian Swick is that age at this time, right? So 2023. And you were physically reprimanded by your parents, you could potentially post about it on social media, and then your parents would be the ones getting in trouble, right?
Now.
Exactly. So that's another issue with society. And here's the thing is to be very clear, I am not a parent yet. And so take that as for what it's worth. But I do think that there is a time and place for somebody to get disciplined, not beat, not abused. And I think there is a difference there, obviously. But Callie and I, so my wife and I were talking about this earlier today. When you're a little kid and you smack somebody and you've never felt that pain before, well, how the heck are you supposed to learn not to do that unless you feel how that feels, right? Or if you bite somebody or whatever it may be, right? It's the same concept as I'm only going to touch the hot stove once, right? I'm only going to lay my hands on somebody once if I just get, a taste of what that feels like. It's like, oh, I shouldn't do that. It hurts. Right. But we can't do that anymore as a society because you'll be labeled and you'll be called an abusive parent. And you, like you said, you might get put in jail or something like that. And there's example of that on TV shows where, kids will go on a rant on social media and then their parents are the ones that get in trouble, or it might not even be true. Right. There's a TV show and it was completely fictional, but the girl posted on social media that her dad was racist and ruined his life. Right? Like that probably happens in real life from time to time because kids are so spiteful. And again, we couldn't do that because we didn't have social media. But
Right.
So yeah,
even if we could have, like, I don't think I would have. Like, I would not have.
No, we wouldn't do that. We respected our parents. We respected our parents and we loved our parents. Did I do dumb shit?
There was also like a smidgen of fear there. Like, there's no fear anymore. Like, I was afraid, like, if I do this, like, I'm going to get in trouble. And that doesn't exist anymore. Like, I remember telling my dad, like, well, if you smack me, I'm going to call the cops. And he was like, well, then I'll make it worth my while if I'm going to go to jail. And I was like, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you are. I know I am. My dad's now almost 72 years old, and I would never step toe to toe with that man. I still have that amount of respect for him.
It's a respect thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of that going on anymore. Like, you can't even take anything away that would have an impact on a kid. Like, they say in school, like, oh, you can't take something away that they enjoy as a punishment because that'll hurt their feelings. Well, that's what, like, made me open my eyes. Like, I was like, you're talking about accountability and how, like, you got sent to the office and came back and had to sit in the back of the room and you were like, well, I'm going to straighten up. I was the opposite. I got sent to the office and sent back to the room, and I just went back to doing what I was doing, and I would just get in trouble again because I didn't care. Like, I didn't care about getting in trouble. I thought it was funny. Like,
you also thought you were looking cool to your friends.
Right. So there was times where I would get multiple detentions in one day.
But that still exists today too, though.
It does.
Kids still act out to impress people.
Like, I was threatened. Like, they told me that if you don't stop acting like you are, then you are off the wrestling team. And I was like,
and eventually you pulled it together. Where
like,
I think
that made me pull it together. Like, that them taking away something that I loved, I was like, holy shit! If they take that away from you, like, what am I going to do? Mm-hmm. So that made me shape up. Like, my sophomore year, when they told me that you're going to get kicked off the team, I was like, okay. And then I changed right there. Like, I stopped getting in trouble.
So all this stuff that we talked about derived from that one question. That one question of what in today's society gets you to this point. So with that being said, we understand that the education portion is something that you really pay attention to and concerned about, and
I mean, there's more to it than just the value aspect of it. I mean, if you look at how schools are run, like, we are teaching to a test. That's what we're doing. Like, kids, like, when I go back to work on Monday, there will be 5 weeks of testing. 5 weeks of testing straight. So all year long, these teachers are teaching to a test. So these kids can take this test, and then the ratings will come out. And if you do well, makes the school look good. If you don't do well, then the school gets a bad rating. And then the teachers get evaluated on how well a student does on a test. So if the kid's never in school and then they do poorly on the test, that hurts the teacher's evaluation. So we're just teaching these kids. It's kind of like they're robots. Like, we're just teaching them to a test. We're not addressing, like, life skills anymore. We're not teaching them how to be a decent human being. We're just ignoring all that stuff and focusing on this test, that one test, so that the school district looks better. And it's not working.
Yeah. And that would bring me to the last portion of the question would be, what do you think it's going to take, or what would you do if you could change it today? What would it be? What would have to happen to make this current society and the way it's accepted to just teach testing, or the lack of discipline? What would it take to change this, to get us back on a direction where, American children are actually getting the education that they deserve, and they're getting something out of school other than being coddled and not learning anything about life? What would it be?
We're going to need a whole societal shift in mindset. Like, I don't know how you go about doing that, but like I can tell you what needs to be done, but how we go about doing that, Like, I don't know. Cause it seems to me like there's bad shit happening all the time and things just keep getting worse. Like I honestly always think like, how bad are we going to let this get before there's a societal shift? And there hasn't been one. Like it continues to keep getting worse. Like you hear about a school shooting. It's like every other day it's on the news or there's something crazy going on or there's some bullying thing going on. Like, how do you fix that? There has to be accountability. There has to be. And we're lacking that everywhere. Like there's no accountability anywhere. And like if you would put that in place, that would have a huge impact. Like if somebody does something that they shouldn't do, they need to be held accountable.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that unfortunately it's going to take something catastrophic to make everyone wake up and realize. And I mean, and don't get me wrong, there are already catastrophic events going on when you talk about school shootings and bullying and suicides and stuff like that. But I think on the societal level, it's going to take something drastic for people to come together with an actual functional works. And the problem is right now is no one can have conversations. No one can sit down and talk about a subject that is divisive, in this case, the education system, because there's a lot of people on one side of the aisle and the other, but they can't talk to each other. They dehumanize each other. They call each other names. They just want to win the argument. They don't want to come to an agreement and come to a solution. So I think that's going to be a whole episode in itself, is talking about education and society and all of that. But what you hit on there is accountability, right? So biggest thing that we're lacking from that perspective is accountability, which leads me to the next question. So of the ideal skills, so again, for everybody out there that's listening, intentionality, discipline, emotional intelligence, accountability, and loyalty, which do you feel of those is most important, and how do you define it, and how has that one skill impacted your life?
So I'm gonna take what, like, they're all important. Like they're all important, and I feel like they all tie into each other. And like the discipline one has always been like a big part of my life, and I feel like that's always an area where I've been good. It has lacked intentionality in the past, but now I'm starting to be more intentional with the discipline, which makes things a lot easier. But I would say that the most important one to me, like that had the biggest impact on my life, is the accountability aspect. Like there was a time in my life where like I was at a low, like it was pretty bad. And I was blaming everybody and everything that I could about me being unhappy with my life. Like I was unhappy at work. I was unhappy at home. I was unhappy in the army. I was unhappy with my hobbies. Like nothing was bringing me joy. And I was blaming everything and everybody but myself. Like I never looked at myself and like, well, this is a Randy thing. No, this was everybody else thing. So like that, like how do I define it is like, it's like taking ownership and then with things within your control. So I'm taking ownership with things that I can control. And it's not just taking that ownership and saying, oh, well, I need to fix this. Then it's taking the action to actually make the change. So like for me, it started with just picking up a book, and I read a book called Extreme Ownership. And honestly, that like just reading that book shifted my mindset to like, holy crap, like I've never once been like, I need to look at myself first. Like, oh, you're unhappy at work, it must be work's fault. No, it's my mindset going into work. You're unhappy with this, well, it's look at your mindset first. So now I think I usually will look at myself first, like what can I do differently, or how can I improve this situation before I start trying to blame everybody else and everyone else around me.
Yeah.
Would you say that book has changed your life?
Yeah, like that book.
Out of all the books you've read in your life, is that the one
that is
book
the book that has gotten me on the path that I am on now? Like, because I mean,
Tyler, for our audience again, what is it called?
Extreme Ownership. It's by Jocko Willink wrote it. He was a former Navy SEAL.
Don't forget Leif Babin. Don't forget Leif Babin. Give him credit
on that. And they have their own company, Echelon Front, and they're doing big things. And like once I started reading that book, that got me on his podcast, and it's really been like a total life change. Now that I still screw up, like it's not perfect. It's never going to be, but like I had never looked at taking ownership as like a thing before. Like I never No, it's like, oh, the team lost today. It's because they suck. It's because my wrestlers aren't good. It's not because of anything I did wrong. The kids didn't pass the test. It's not because of my teaching. It's because of them. Well, now I look at it as like, okay, this kid's not understanding it. So what am I doing wrong? What could I do better to help this kid understand what I'm trying to teach him? And I try to apply that to everything that I do now. And like when you start taking ownership, I feel like people around you start taking ownership. So
you're also pulling in emotional intelligence. You're seeing that kid struggles. So you're emotionally understanding there's something that this young man needs that I'm not giving to him. So
right. I recognize, like, you have to recognize the emotions around you and then take that into account as well. But like, yeah, like the accountability aspect has really had a profound impact on my life. And yes, that book, it's as silly as it seems, just one book changed my life. I mean, it really did, because I was struggling. I was at a low point in life there, and I was making bad decision after bad decision. And I mean, I'm not going to say that like I was suicidal, but I was definitely depressed and having negative thoughts. I mean, I was living in Kyle's basement, and things were just not going my way at that time. And I was looking for excuses, and I was blaming everybody and everything that I could. And until I read that book, like I didn't take ownership in anything. And then I read it and I started applying it to my life, and I was like, man, like a lot of this stuff is on me. Like all this stuff is on me. I could have done so many things differently that would have changed the trajectory of my life. And now that I'm doing it, and you have to be intentional with this, that makes it, like I said, it's not perfect, but I'm starting to be in a better place because of it.
You're hitting more goals that you've set for yourself.
And I mean, it's not even about the goals. Like it's just not blaming society for my problems, or not blaming my wife because I'm unhappy, or my kids, or my job. I got to look at myself first. What can I do to improve the situation? Like I'm not happy with my job and I want to leave it. So I can sit around for the next 20 years and just bitch about it, or I can do something about it. Like that's the other part of accountability. You need to take action. If you just stay in the same old, that's your fault. You have to take action and make a change. So like right now with Ideal, we're making that change. We're trying to do something that's going to get me out of that career that I don't enjoy.
Yeah. No, that's great. And that leads perfectly into our last question here. So you talked a lot about your life, a lot about the Ideal skills and how you've applied them to your life. So if you had one piece of advice to leave the listeners with, what would that be?
All right. So for this, it's something else that I've learned in the past couple of years. Like I'd never really applied this until now. Like, yes, I'm goal oriented. I set goals, but I've always in the past been focused on the outcome. Like it's always about the result, the outcome. Now I focus on the process. I mean, you might not always reach the goal that you set. Like if you're setting real goals, they should be difficult to achieve. And sometimes you're not going to achieve them. If you're achieving your goals every time, then you need to look at your goals because you're not making them hard enough. So now I focus on the process, and it really, I mean, once you start enjoying the process more, I mean, it makes things so much better. Like I can give several examples of this. When I was at basic training, like my goal when I was there was to max out the PT test. That's what I wanted to do. Push-ups and sit-ups, maxed them the first time I ever took it. Like I said earlier, not a runner. So in order for me to max the PT test, I had to run a 13-minute 2-mile. And that's a pretty good pace. And every run, I was busting my ass. Like that was my goal. I got to get a 13-minute 2-mile. If I don't get a 13-minute 2-mile, then I am a failure. I did not reach my goal. First run at basic, I ran a 15:30 2-mile. That's a 2-minute and 30-second improvement that I need to make. That's a big amount of minutes that I need to decrease.
Especially in only 2 miles, 2.5 minutes is huge.
And you're only at basic for how long? Like 10 weeks. So I got
10 weeks total, but that was with reception. So like you were actually only in basic for like 8 weeks.
So I got 8 weeks to decrease my run time by 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And don't get me wrong, you're doing PT every day. you're going to get in better shape.
Mm-hmm.
And I busted my ass on the runs because that was my goal. And the final PT test came, and I ran my ass off. And I ran a 13:20. 13:20.
Just shy.
I was shy by 20 seconds. And I beat myself up over that. I was like, I'm a failure. I'm a loser. I didn't achieve my goal. I look back on it now. If I would have focused on the process, I made over a 2-minute improvement in 8 weeks. That's crazy. Like 2-minute improvement. That's awesome. I didn't think of it that way. It was all or nothing. It was either I'm gonna get this and be successful, or I'm gonna not get it and I'm gonna be a loser, and I failed. And if you only focus on the outcome, like it screws with your mindset. It screws with your mindset because you could be achieving so many small wins along the way, and then you don't celebrate those things. Celebrate the small wins. That stuff's huge. Like if I would have known that back then, man, like I don't know like where my
Totally
life would be
different
right
today.
now. Because the same thing with wrestling. It was always like, if you don't win this match, you're a loser. You're a failure. It's not about like improving in your skill set. You're just a loser if you don't win. And I would put so much pressure on myself that I would just go out there and I would freeze up. All my matches were to wrestle to not lose. And when you wrestle like that, you don't open up, and you either going to win like a 1-point match or you're going to lose a 1-point match. And that's not fun. It's not fun. It's fun to go out there and put on a show and score a bunch of points and wrestle freely. And I never did that. So if I could give you any advice, it would be focus on the process. Do not worry about the outcome, and celebrate the small wins along the way.
Yeah, I love that. And that's what the ideal skills are all about. The ideal skills are all about the process. It's all about getting a little bit better every single day, being more mindful of these skills, how to apply them, when you don't apply them, learning that lesson, being intentional, reflecting on it, and growing along the way. So I think that's amazing advice. And it really, really aligns with what we're doing here with both the podcast and the personal coaching and the leadership development. And to tell everybody out there, we started this because we did it. We applied these skills to our own life in order to dig ourselves out of our lowest points in our life. And again, Brian and I will get into that personally on the upcoming episodes. But with these skills, if you live them, you will see improvement. And it's not easy. It is again, no, we're stealing this from, from a person that we all look up to with Jocko, but it's simple. Like, this concept is not earth shattering. We're not reinventing the wheel. It's nothing crazy. However, it's hard. It's going to be a challenge. So if you don't focus on the process, like you just said, Randy, it's not going to be enjoyable. So you have to be mindful of that. You have to celebrate those small wins, like you said.
Like you said, like we're doing this right now. We didn't just start this. Like Kyle and Brian and myself, like in one way or another, we have been talking about starting some type of business probably for the last 12 years. Like it's been like a 12-year process where we have come up with some crazy ass ideas that we were going to do to get out of our W-2 jobs and just work for ourselves.
Like sucking poop out of septic tanks.
Sucking poop out of septic tank, window washing.
I like the idea of opening our own gym.
We're gonna open a gym. Like we're gonna do all these things that we never took action on. Why didn't we take action? Because we were scared. We were scared to fail, and that goes back into the whole enjoying the process part. Like you're gonna fail. You're gonna fail a lot, and I don't know what happened with our society. Like now people are so afraid of failure that they just don't even try things. Like my own kids, like I have to talk to them about this all the time. Like, oh, I'm terrible at this. I'm like, yeah, you've done it one time. You're not going to be good at something that you do one time. You're going to fail. And I used to be like that. And up until recently, like I looked at failure as it was either an all or nothing thing. And failure really, like now the way I look at it is like failure is an attempt at learning. It's an attempt at learning. And if you don't get it, I mean, who cares? You're going to try again. Learn from your mistakes and try again. And if we wouldn't have taken this jump, then we'd still be in the same boat that we have been in the last 12 years where we're just miserable and taking no action and making excuses. And it's just not a fun way to live life.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I think that entire piece of advice that you just gave there is truly amazing. And you hit the nail on the head. If we continue to allow failure to control our actions, we wouldn't be here right now doing what we're doing, trying to help people, trying to make an impact on individuals, trying to make an impact on society. And like Randy said, that's a big goal. To sit here and say that we want to make an impact on society, that is a huge goal. And maybe we don't make some massive impact, but maybe we make a small impact, and that's okay. So maybe we don't hit the big goal, but maybe we hit a couple little goals along the right way, and that's success in itself, because we at least made some sort of difference within ourselves, within individuals, and hopefully on some level with society. So I absolutely love that. So again, thanks for opening up. Thanks for sharing everything. We're going to be doing more and more of this as we go on. We're going to be digging deep. We're going to be sharing more about ourselves. But initially, to start, we wanted to be open. We wanted to be honest. You'll see that we like to joke around, as well as be serious within there too. So thanks everybody for joining us for the first episode. So what has impacted, this is a question for everybody out there. So what has impacted you to come listen to us? We want to hear about that. So open up to us, connect with us on social media. On Instagram, we're at ideal_impact_podcast. On Twitter, we're at impact_ideal, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so we had to switch things up because Ideal Impact was already taken. Facebook, we are the Ideal Impact Podcast. So go ahead, reach out, connect with us there. We also have a monthly connect call where we have 10 spots available to connect with us directly. You can give us feedback about the podcast. You can dictate the direction that we take with this. So if there's good topics that come out of those discussions, we're going to take that. We're going to use it on the podcast, and we'll have specific topics for those conversations. But again, we want to keep it organic. We want to keep it natural. So we'll have some questions to get us started, and it may take a different direction. So we're excited to offer that. You can find that all over social media. You sign up right now. It's free. Sign up at Eventbrite. It's hosted on Zoom. You can join from anywhere in the world. We typically do that on a Tuesday night once a month from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time. So again, we really want to hear from you. Our website will be coming soon, which will be another opportunity to connect with us. And then we just launched a Printify store, Printify pop-up store, so you can order Ideal gear on there. If you like what we're doing, if you don't like what we're doing, we want to hear from you. If you disagree with us, that's one big thing that we're trying to promote, that there are good things that come out of healthy disagreement. So we want to hear from, if we talk about a topic and you don't agree, let's talk about it. As long as we can treat each other like human beings and be respectful, we want to have those open discussions and debate, because maybe through that situation or that conversation, we can actually come to an agreement, and maybe there's something that we can do together to hopefully impact society, like we said. So again, thanks for everybody for listening. And when you reach out to us, try to answer that question. So what has impacted you to come listen to us and what we're doing here with Ideal? Any last comments, Randy, Brian, anything that you wanted to share before we jump off?
No, just thanks for listening.
Yeah. We
Awesome.
appreciate all the support, and, like Kyle said, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from y'all.
Great. Awesome, guys. What was that?
Stay classy, San Diego.
I believe it's Santiago.
All right.